I think we are here starting from consciousness to evolve. We're here to understand who we are and then to refine. Perfection is the enemy of creation. I love that word, how to refine ourselves, how to be more than we have been before.
And it seems like that the more I grow, that's all life is about, is raising your consciousness and getting into that spiritual fitness. I'm your host, Eric Bigger, and I'm back again with another episode. And people, we're going to learn about the secret language of the body, how to heal yourself, ancestral trauma, emotional and energetic healing. And I got award-winning author and global healing expert, Inna Segal, all the way from Australia. Inna, how are you? Welcome to Spiritual Fitness.
I'm great. How are you?
I'm incredible. Well, I just want to say thank you for taking the time. I know you're in Australia. You're far away, which is why I love life, right? Because this device, Zoom, the phones, keep us all connected. But let's get right into it. What was for you growing up? I want to talk about the secrets and language of the body, the book, but where did that secret language within connect and tap in with you for you to start having more awareness around what's inside of you for the life you're living or the life you're in? At what age?
So I was around 20 when I had my big healing experience, but prior to that, I had psoriasis all over my skin from when I was about 10. And then between 14 and 15, I started getting really bad back pain that just kept deteriorating. And I always had digestive problems as long as I remember. And then all of that culminated in stress and anxiety and just lots of tension inside of my body. So I was seeing a lot of medical professionals at the beginning, trying to, get medication for psoriasis or for pain. And then when I was about 18, I met some people, including my partner at the time, who was very open to alternative medicine, and he was kind of guiding me towards it. And so I was seeing a lot of practitioners, but I was showing up like most people do who've been taught by the medical system that you and your body are not friends, essentially, that you're meant to show up, take your medication and, have your surgery or something, and then you're healed and you don't have to do anything. And so that was my approach to anyone I went to. Okay, here I am, fix me. And so I would get better for a week, for a couple of weeks when I would see alternative practitioners, but it would never hold, it would never last. And so eventually I was seeing this chiropractor about 3 times a week, for over a year, and I remember waking up and just going, "I can't keep going like this. I'm in agony. My back feels inflamed, twisted. I can hardly walk." And, when I showed up at the chiropractor's office, I was really at kind of the end of my tether 'cause I was 20 at that time.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, how long can I keep doing this? I've been struggling with my health issues most of my life to different degrees. I cannot continue like this. And so the chiropractor had heard about this whole situation, came out of his office, which was very strange. He'd never done that. And, he looked at me and he said, "Oh, hey, so your body's stuck." And I said, "Yeah, I know that part. What are you going to do to fix it?" And I think something happened to both of us when I said that, because he kind of went, well, there's nothing I can do to fix it. Your body wants to be stuck.
Wow.
And he actually said, "Go home." Um, I remember being enraged that he could say this to me, in the state that I was in. How could he? But on the way home, I made a decision that I was going to heal myself. And so essentially when I came home, I had no idea how to do it, but I had done a lot of acting classes because I thought was going to do acting, and I had learned how to, breathe consciously, how to connect to the body. But I only did that when I was doing acting classes. I never did that in general. So I thought, okay, fine, I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna go home and start whatever way, but I'm gonna heal myself. And so I just started by placing my hands on my back, breathing into my back, realizing how often I held my breath and counting backwards from 30. And then just it occurred to me that one of the things that I'd never asked, and I didn't even know how to ask or what to think about it,
Mhm.
but it was really connecting to something higher or divine. And so I said, if there is something higher, if there is something divine that can help me now, please help me. And I literally had zero expectations. But there was this, I had my eyes closed and this warmth started to pour into my body. And I remember thinking, okay, well, something's happening. I don't know what, but something. And then this other thought came into my head. I wonder what my back looks like. And then it just felt like someone switched a light on that had not been on. And I
Mm.
could see into my back. And I got a fright originally, but then I thought to myself, you know what? I'm connecting to my body. I really want to know what's going on.
Mm.
And so I'm going to ask questions, but not like I've asked before, which is, why is my body like this? And I
Yeah.
have no answers, right? How most people ask. Oh, so that was me. And then, so I said, hey, from a place of curiosity, I want to know what this is about. Why am I the way I am now? How can I be like this at 20? And so I had, the only way to describe it was like memory meets insight and
Yeah.
wisdom that
Absolutely.
showed up like a vision.
What transpired from there to be who you are today?
I felt a lot of things and I became aware of where things came from. So it was like putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And for the next several weeks, I actually woke up the next day and about 70% of my back pain was gone, which I had never been able to do myself.
Yeah.
So for the next few weeks, I was just journaling and connecting and asking lots of questions and writing things down and um, turning a lot of the traumas that I had experienced or pain or challenges around. So it was almost like I was looking for, this is the limiting, fearful, negative way that I'm seeing life. How do I change that?
Right.
Because I realized that was my biggest realization at the time, that until I could turn that around, that perspective on life, I was going to continue to recreate the same situations. So I had to start seeing things not in a completely different way from the perspective of, "Oh, I'm gonna have a fantasy of how things are different," but more from, "Okay, what did I really learn from this?"
Yeah.
Or, "What am I needing to learn from this that I haven't learned that would make me grow and see life in a new way?" So that was a huge part of healing and transforming. And then I realized that I could see or sense things around other people if I was to tune into them. And that kind of opened up the idea of, okay, so I've helped myself, but somehow helping myself has opened the door to helping others.
Right.
So now I want to help others. And that led to, okay, how do I understand what's happened to me? I'm going to need to, study it and learn about it. Then a doctor actually invited me to work in his clinic. He was very open to exploring alternative medicine. He had done acupuncture himself. So, he would send me, we were next door to each other. So he'd send me
Yeah.
clients and we'd discuss, what to do, how to help people. And he'd go, okay, these people have spiritual issues, you deal with them.
Right.
So, yeah, it was pretty amazing. And then I wrote The Secret Language of Your Body based on the fact that there were several challenges that I was seeing coming up with people. One of them was that when I would tune into certain people who were not necessarily prepared for it, they would react and they would go, no, I don't have this issue.
Right. Right.
And then a week later, 2 weeks later, they'd call me and they'd go, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I said this to you. I do have this issue. And so I realized that maybe there was a way to share with those people who are new to this in a way that was less threatening by saying, hey, um, people who have liver issues, let's say, have these types of thought patterns or belief systems or emotions that show up. Do you relate to this?
Yeah.
And so I wrote about all of those aspects. And then I thought, whenever I had clients, I realized that even if somebody was seeing me once a week, it was not enough to have the type of results that people wanted. They really needed to do some work at home. It had to be a
That's
combined effort,
consistent effort.
right?
So where do you feel in the world we live today, why people are so afraid to detach from the old story that keeps them stuck or in the past to get into a new story, even though they don't have the evidence of it? What keeps people in the lack and limitation or the fear of changing because of the story they once believed? What's that about, you think, within the body?
Safety.
Okay.
It's like I'm safe with what I know,
Mhm.
and also that sense of what people don't realize is that we go through different stages of healing. Most people, when they start to realize that there are different stages of healing, they go, I had no idea that I've been stuck in stage 1 or 2, which is all about stuckness and suffering and not really seeing what is possible because you're so intertwined in your own story. You don't know that there is another way.
Yeah.
You don't know there's another story to tell. So they actually go, oh, wow, my whole life has been in this stage of suffering, stuckness, and going round and round in circles and trying to get the magic pill and for somebody to fix me because I don't know. I don't even have the understanding that I have the
Yeah.
capacity to fix myself or heal myself, let alone what is the journey of it.
What is emotional work to people listening, people's going to watch this so we can kind of have a better context?
Well, I'm gonna say I think you need to be guided.
Okay.
I think that most people need some kind of guidance to eventually feel that safety.
Okay.
I think that for most people just starting, they have no idea where to start, and they often don't have. And I love that word safety, Eric, that
Yeah.
you've brought up. Because what people need is to actually have a really strong sense of self before they can go into a deep emotional kind of exploration.
Yeah.
If their sense of self is very weak, what can happen, which is the biggest fear that most people have, is that I'm going to fall apart and
Yeah.
then I won't be able to come back together. And there's some truth in that. Because if your sense of self is very weak and you don't really know yourself and you haven't kind of asked yourself the questions and had time to self reflect and become really conscious of who am I inside, what do I believe, what do I stand for? What am I about? Which makes you strong, which builds you up. You can go through an experience and literally not know who you are and feel like your emotions now overtake you because you don't know how to hold them, right? And so what I do when I'm teaching people, I always talk about many different aspects. One, preparation for emotional work. So creating an nervous system preparedness, because the nervous system, and again, people get confused about it, and they'll put everything onto the nervous system
Yeah,
because they don't really understand it.
yeah.
The nervous system is constantly operating in watching and observing what's really going on.
Mhm.
What's going on? Like, what am I? Is it safe? Is it unsafe? Is it, to be in this environment, to express myself, to experience things? And the nervous system, once, like when you have a trauma or a traumatic experience, will hold that experience inside of it. And people say, well, it holds a memory. It's a bit more than a memory. It will hold a
Oh,
charge,
a chart.
right? It will
Okay.
hold. It's much more. A memory is actually not held inside the nervous system the way people think. It's actually held in something called the etheric body, which is the body of aliveness and energy and vitality, and is the copy of the physical. The nervous system will hold the charge of it.
Yeah.
So it will go, okay, this is what happened. I'm now, it was traumatic. So now I'm going to go into that experience of fight or flight, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be on guard all the time. But it's not because it's the exact memory inside the nervous system. It's because that's what the nervous system experienced by your perception of whatever you saw. You could see a shadow and go, "Oh my God, like someone's in the room, something's happening," and go into a trauma response.
How could someone get out of the old story that they're tired of and they know it's a story, but they can't let it go? What happens?
There's so many ways to
Yeah.
do that. And I think, it starts with like what you were saying, when we start to feel numb. So
Mm,
let's say I'm having an experience with somebody,
yeah.
and I don't feel anything. I feel like a numbness. There's not a lot of feelings. That's the nervous system kind of coming in and going, um, I can't feel things with this person because feeling is dangerous.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm gonna need to be in self-protect mode. So immediately we create these boundaries, around ourselves that feel cold, like literally that we go into this state of coldness and, disconnection, and which, really affects the heart. And I'm going to say the heart and the solar plexus are the areas to do with emotions in a big way.
Yeah.
So we start to feel cold, disconnected. And as you were saying, when we then start to recognize it. So the first step is really recognition and going, this feeling of numbing or not feeling anything or feeling cold, or saying, I don't, nothing, I don't know what it is. Um, that's a feeling of protection.
Yeah.
So what am I protecting? So it's actually starting with, rather than going too deep into something, everyone has their own, as I was saying, capacity.
Got it.
And so you might, someone can go really, really deep and go straight to all the layers of it, and someone else may not. Um, I believe in slower is better because then you go deeper and you do it properly. So you actually go, what's the first layer? The first layer is protection. Okay, so what if I'll say to people, okay, let's imagine a purple fire in front of you. And that fire is the imagery that kind of burns and transforms what you don't need anymore. And placing your hands on that part of your body where you feel numbness, often it will be in the heart. Because the heart is that first place that goes into protection mode because you felt rejected. And then breathing into that area to create a connection and not forcing the breath, but actually feeling and giving yourself permission to feel, and actually saying that to yourself, I give myself permission to have to feel whatever's there that I'm able to feel today. And as you breathe, and often I'll say to people, breathe in through your mouth, through your nose, and out through your mouth with slightly pursed lips. And the reason we do that type of breathing is because it actually calms the nervous system and allows you to feel as opposed to hold back on feelings. And then you would go, okay, what am I feeling? And if the answer is nothing or not much, you would go, okay, what am I protecting myself from feeling?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's the quality of the questions we ask as well. What am I protecting myself from feeling? And if that had a shape, what would it be? Like this level of protection. And if inside that shape there was a color, what would it be? And I'll often say, and then ask yourself, is this a healthy color? Because color is actually the language of the soul.
Oh,
And your inner self will show you what's going on through the colors. But because we don't really understand how to, how they work together, they are like math,
yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
So, I'll say that and then I'll go, okay, well now that you know what the color is, what the shape are there any words attached to this that can give you another insight? And the words could be, I don't want to feel, or this is, I'm stuck. And it's like, okay, now we're starting to understand that. And then it'll be like, okay, can you release this? And the first steps, again, to emotional work is to go, if this was energy with a shape and a color and some, maybe feelings and words, and we could start to kind of take that energy and those layers out and take them out and place them into the purple fire with that consciousness of I'm letting go
Yeah.
of where I felt stuck, can you then do that for a few minutes and then go, okay, let me reconnect back to my body. And sometimes I'll say to people, okay, I'm going to get you just to shake your body, just to shake your arms and shake out that stress. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to create that internal flexibility inside the nervous system. So, how fast somebody heals and how much they transform and what the release is like is completely based on whether their nervous system is frozen, stuck in that place of I'm in protect mode, or the nervous system is going, it is safe for me to move through these layers of whatever's happened to me, but in a flexible way. So essentially, we're looking at, is it flexible or inflexible? The more flexible your nervous system is, the more flow there is, the more faster and more pleasant the healing will be. The more stagnant it is. And for me, somebody who can see into the body, it almost looks like the energy is flowing blocked, flowing blocked, flowing blocked. So no staccato, right?
Right.
And so when I see that in people, I'm like, oh, this is gonna take some time because and you can't force this. The more you try to make it faster, the slower it's gonna be, the more you're gonna go into creating barriers and boundaries and protect mode and not allowing emotions to flow because it's not safe.
Yeah.
And that's what the nervous system is constantly really looking at and asking.
Do you have something in your archives to help people get into that space of just really developing a better flexible nervous system?
Breathing, touching parts of your body that feel uncomfortable, breathing into those parts of the body, um, and then starting to recognize what am I holding, like I was saying before.
Yeah.
But also with colors, for instance, we know that greenery, like going into nature, calms us down. For most people, that's just a knowing, that everyone is aware of it. That's why we go, let's go to nature. I need to rejuvenate. And so actually closing your eyes, breathing in through your nose, breathing out through your mouth with slightly pursed lips, while imagining a soft rain of green light, just cleansing your spine, your nervous system, and helping you to relax and calm down is a very, very simple thing that takes a couple of minutes to do that people can do throughout the day.
What is your take on plant medicine or psychedelics, and what do you think is a benefit for the world we're living in today, far as consciousness? Because I know people who do well in life, but their consciousness is not as high as their bank account, if that makes sense, or they don't feel like they have to work on that consciousness. And it seems like that the more I grow, that that's all life is about, is raising your consciousness and getting into that higher state, if you will, if you can, if it's part of your purpose. What is your experiment or your experience and perspective on consciousness and then psychedelics or plant medicine?
Well, I think we are here starting from consciousness to evolve. There is no doubt about that for me from everything that I've studied and learned that we're here to understand who we are and then to refine. And so I'm not that believer that we've come here perfect because I feel like, well, that makes it's illogical. And it's not even, my partner always says, perfection is the enemy of creation. It makes no sense to say perfect, but we're here to learn how to refine. So I love that word, how to refine ourselves, how to be more than we have been before. So right? It makes no sense to go, I am perfect, and then I've become imperfect. It's like, no, you've come here to grow essentially, and the question is how much can you grow in the time that you have? How much can you understand who you are as a soul and a spirit being? How much can you understand about what you're here to give in terms of your, let's call it soul's purpose?
Yeah.
How much can you strengthen your sense of self to understand things? And so again, I'm not against, like, a lot of people, I feel like they see the ego as just this, egotistical lower self, whereas,
Right.
to me, that's one side of the ego that needs to be redeemed and
Yeah.
transformed. And then there's the higher self, which is part of your ego as well, that needs to be awakened
Ah,
and nourished and strengthened.
it's really, really.
You know, and then I feel like we need to understand so many things about where we came from, where we're going, like what is the spiritual world? And so, that is, again, for some people it's an interest, for others it's not. But essentially, we're all going back into spiritual, world experience. And so not knowing it to me is like going to China and knowing no rules about, what it's like there. And again, not saying that spiritual world is like China, but you have to know the rules. Like you have to know you have to have some understanding of what happens there. So I'm a big believer in that. Um, in terms of, I think, psychedelics, well, I've looked at this from so many different angles. Um, there are, because it does need to be looked at from different things. There's the medical angle from it. There is the spiritual angle from it. I think if I start from the spiritual angle, I think that, you know, if people I really believe in preparation for meeting spiritual experiences. So I think the thing that I find the most frustrating is that, it's become so popular that people go into it with no preparation before. And, whilst it can be okay for some people, for other people, it can actually damage them a lot. And I've seen people and have had countless messages from people who went on an ayahuasca journey or another journey and did not know how to get back into their own bodies, and they literally shot their whole nervous system, and they can't move, they can't walk, they
Wow.
can't, I've had people come to me on a stretcher, because they've done things that was too much.
So I want to understand in my and personally, and just for people, how do we move through or move past, or maybe we don't, ancestral trauma, or how do we heal from it to get to the other side where we feel safe and we can free more people? And what is your thoughts on it? Because, I'm just speaking out loud, or maybe you have a better language for it, because I love your
Mhm.
terminology, refinement.
Well, let's just finish for a minute
Yeah,
with the topic of psychedelics.
yeah,
So I think that in the past, in like when people, I come from a lineage where, we had shamans that were very kind of conscious of what it takes,
yeah,
right? And you had to learn how to be, how to become a shaman from childhood and so on. And, you could go on those journeys maybe, I don't know, 2 times in your life to see things. And, but it was very sacred and, you had to really, really prepare for it. And so I have a big belief in preparation to meet the spiritual
I love that.
because because when people use the word spiritual, they don't really understand necessarily what it actually means because we have many spiritual planes, and the less preparation someone has, the more likely they are to go to the lower plane rather than the higher plane because they can't hold the energy of something higher. They're not capable of it. All right. They haven't refined enough. So they'll open the door to something dark potentially that may even look like light. And so this is something that is really important for people to understand because people don't know that and often don't like the sound of it, but it's just what it is. I've seen it countless times. So that's super, super important. And then, you know, I guess in the medical sense, I think when people have a very shut down nervous system, let's say, and they've gone through massive traumas in their life, and they really do have that, you know, post traumatic stress disorder and so on, and they just don't have it in them to do it in a different way. Can it be helpful? Yes, but I think that absolutely people get insights and understandings and wisdom, but again, it needs to be done very carefully because when it comes to that emotional traumatic, transformation from psychedelics, because we're actually working with spiritual beings when we take psychedelics.
Yeah.
The issue that I personally have with it is that in my experience of tuning into people, whenever you do a psychedelic experience, there is an exchange that happens. And the exchange is there is an aspect of your soul that you have to give to get whatever the inside of the healing is.
Right.
And I just feel like people don't understand that nothing is for free in this world. And so if I enter spiritual world through that in that way, then yes, I can still get help and I can still get insights and so on. But I do have to give an aspect of my soul. I've seen it, and very often people feel numb after the experience, because there is an aspect that has been exchanged. And so that bothers me quite a lot because I feel like, that is a way to go in. And then there is many ways, like you were saying, through certain connection with your breath, questions, exploration, prayer, divinity, knowing particular processes. I teach a lot of those that where you don't have to take a drug that which
Oh,
it is
yeah,
essentially.
yeah,
Exactly, and the minute that you do take something like that, your sense of I am, your sense of self will weaken without a doubt
yeah.
because you can't do both. So I think people just have to really see where they're at and be careful. And also, like you were saying, Eric, who's guiding you.
Yeah.
And I also believe that if you do have those experiences, I'm not a believer in doing them regularly. I
Right,
think,
right, right, right.
they should be done, maybe a couple of times in your lifetime if you choose to do those,
Yeah.
and seen as that. And then you expand out of it, but you use your own consciousness.
Everyone should know how to connect to the secrets language of their body. Speaking on that topic, what can people get from the book, and what's the biggest takeaway you want people all to see in a book for them? Because I actually love the name. Like, did you channel that? Did that come to you? Like, how did that? I think you got a book named like The Life of Wellness or something. I feel like all your titles are very like a transmission. How do you get into like your titles? And that's I really want to talk about the secrets. Secrets body. What's the title again?
Secret language of your body.
Yes.
All right, let's do that, and then we'll still go back to ancestry before we
Yeah.
complete.
Yeah.
So for the book, I I wanted it to be a tool for people.
Right.
So I broke it down into, and I think I've got it here. Yeah. I actually have both of the ones you've mentioned here. Secret language of your
Look,
body, the
to
secret
get
of life.
place. Yeah, I love that.
So in the secret language of your body, I broke it down into sections, and it starts with, how do we understand a body? How can we tune into our own bodies? What are the different steps that we need to do to create a healthier life and body? And so I really encourage people to read section one before jumping into every other section. And, so just to go a little faster, so we have a section on all the body parts and the spine. And I figured if I give a process for a body part, whatever health issues you have, there'll be different body parts that you can work with to improve it. And then I did a section on diseases and what can cause a particular disease, and, mental, emotional, energetic. Then I did a section on color healing and understanding color, and again, how to use it and not to overuse it. And, I did a section on emotions and understanding emotions, and how you are asking that question, how do we begin with emotions? So there is a beginning stage, and then there is a deepening stage with emotions that we don't actually have a lot of time to talk about, where we're going to archetypal work. Um, and then, I complete with the systems of the body, so that people can see how it's all intertwined and what each system is teaching us. So that's what the book is about, with lots of processes and exercises people can do. Um, and then let's jump quickly into ancestry, because
Yeah,
that is really,
that.
it's okay. So we mentioned about the nervous system, and I mentioned about the etheric body.
Mhm.
So the etheric body is the body most connected to ancestry within us. This is why we look like our family members. This is why we have certain um, characteristics of our family members. So what happens is that we carry these um, whatever. Let's say it like this: whatever people in our family line experience that was really painful and traumatic and difficult, that they did not process, will get passed down.
Got it.
It's kind of like, we pass things energetically to our family members, which is why I always say someone has to start to change this, so that the rest of the generations can be freer,
Yeah.
because it's harder when you don't know what it is. But essentially, at the moment, I'm actually about to teach a workshop on ancestry. So what we're looking at with ancestry is, you know, firstly, to understand what's mine and what's not mine.
Right.
You know, so right, so it's like,
Yeah.
what is really, these are my beliefs, that this is what I've established, and this is what I've learned
Mm.
from people, and I need to question this and separate this from myself if that's not my truth.
Yeah.
And very often the age of 9 is very important, because 9 is the time where we start to go, hold on a sec, maybe I'm not exactly the same as my dad in this way. Maybe I'm different and unique in this way to my mum, to my grandma, to other people that I know in my family. So we start to have these separations, that we subconsciously go, I'm like that, I'm not like that. I'm like that, this. this is attractive to me, this is not. And so, and then we start to go, okay, if let's say there's been a lot of loss in my family line and I keep recreating this in my own life, what is this loss really about? And it could be financial loss, it could be loss of, family, it could be loss of loved ones, it could be, living in a particular loss of home.
Yeah.
So, we start to, and many of us carry this loss within,
For sure.
right? So when we hear war or anything, we actually, go into a state of shock or trauma, even if we're not there often, because if it's in our, genetics and if it's in our line. So part of it is facing the aspects that we can face. And then, you know, another part of it is going, okay, what is it that I do need to grow through? And what do I need to, by facing it and kind of transforming that energy? And sometimes it goes back, and often actually, where we start, when I'm teaching this work, we start in the womb and we start to go, okay, let's separate what did I take on that's dark and heavy that actually comes from my mother's line, from in the womb, what comes from my father's, what is it that I don't need to continue to carry, what in terms of what they've experienced. And then you might go, okay, if I'm looking at a health issue, where in my family line did this come and what was going on? And sometimes people say, well, yeah, I don't know how to do that, which most people tell you, well, like, I don't remember it. And this is where I found that working with archetypes is so powerful, because when you can bring the members of your family or invite them through who've passed on, and maybe it's, I don't know, 3 generations back, and they're coming through that archetypal experience, you actually still get to know and gain all the insights that you need. And often it's forgiveness, often it's compassion, often it's understanding that will make us move on and do things differently. Because once you understand, right, you have choice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're doing,
Perpetuate. Yeah.
yeah, you're perpetuating it unconsciously. So a lot of ancestral work is a combination, from my perspective, of understanding yourself, understanding archetypes from the perspective of, well, in my being a female, in my feminine line, I could just, y- you know, I connect to all females,
Yeah.
you know, to a degree, that have come before me and that are here and coming after me. And so what is it that I'm carrying, and have brought into myself, and how can I understand it? And we really often don't understand it unless we see the internal representation, which is what we're calling an archetype. And that internal representation will show me, do I feel like I'm really vibrant in my feminine or my masculine, or am I weakened in it?
Yeah.
And it could be the family line, but it could be society as a whole. So it needs to work in a combined way.
This was phenomenal. But the last question, when you think of spiritual fitness, what is spiritual fitness to you?
I think for me, spiritual fitness is really about creating a life where, from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, you have a practice, and it's not a practice that you force yourself to do or you have to do. It's a practice that allows you to live the life that you want to live. So, from the moment you wake up, having, like you were just saying, Eric, a meditation practice, having a movement practice, at some point through the day, or, several times a week at least, having, you know, tools to work on your whatever shows up for you, because it always will as long as you're alive. That's why I say to people, you don't need to be motivated. You just need to be aware of your life and go, is this how I want to live fully, or is there a better way to live? Is there a more evolved way to live? So, to me, that fitness is about loving yourself enough from the perspective of taking care of yourself and having, clear understanding of, what can I do in the morning, afternoon, evening as my practice to keep me, you know, strong and fit in every way, mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Once again, people get the book, follow her on all social media accounts. I'll put everything in the show notes. And is there anything else we're missing or something we should look forward to that you might have coming up or something you want to say to leave us with?
I just invite people to go to my website, innasegal.com, and look at all the masterclass section, or, especially if you're new, looking at, there's kind of mini courses there that you can start, that, you know, you might start with doing half an hour to an hour a day for like a week and experience it. And then you might go, "Ooh, now I have this fitness practice that we've just talked about, spiritual fitness."
Yeah.
And then you might want to go deeper and explore, a deep dive into ancestry or inner child work, or connecting to yourself and doing healing. I teach a 10-day deep dive, Awaken the Healing Within course as well, for those who are ready for that level of depth and transformation. But yeah, come and have a look and check it out. I'm always creating new things.
There we go. Hey, you say co-creation and collaboration. Inna Segal, guys, follow her. This has been another Spiritual Fitness podcast. Subscribe to the show, subscribe to the YouTube, and follow us on all socials. With that being said, and thank you, and we'll connect soon. Peace.
Thank you.